Yuan, drinking song at Stonefish Lake with an introduction. Everywhere, old men brew wine with rice from public fields. In my leisure time, I took some wine to the lake and enjoyed the chance to get drunk on the shore. We could reach out, buy more wine from the wine boats for us to sit and drink. We were at Bar Island, with June Mountain looming above us. Even when the waves were huge, the wine boats could reach us. I composed this song to celebrate. Stonefish Lake is like Dongting, with rising summer waters, June Mountain turning green. The mountain, a wine jar. The lake, a pool of wine. We drinking men are gathered along the island sands. Strong winds for days on end stir massive waves, but they haven't stopped the boatmen bringing wine. With a huge wine gourd in my hands, I sit on Bar Island, dispensing wine for all of us to drink away our sorrows. So here we have a poem by Yuan. We have already encountered one poem of his that talked about the depredations of the tax collectors after the An Lushan rebellion. That poem and this one are the only two that Yuan has in the collection. Yuan was a relatively minor poet and minor official as well, as far as I'm aware of. And he had the governorships of different provinces in different periods of his life. From the introduction to this poem, we might suppose that Yuan wrote it when he was rather old or about to be retired. He's referring to old men drinking rice from public fields. And this poem, the topic of this poem, has very clearly been perceived in the reading, I believe, is a symposiac, or rather Bacchic. Yeah, drinking wine. And now, drinking wine was something relatively regulated in traditional China. So all cultures, all civilizations drink wine. In the case of China, that wine is mostly millet or rice wine. And there are always some social regulations about what is acceptable, socially acceptable wine drinking. And in China, it was specially emphasized that drinking wine should take place at rituals, and old people, retired people, should be allowed to, drink a few cups and get a little bit drunk. Although, of course, everybody up to a certain point did it in Tang China. Remember that a lot of Tang poems are about drinking wine, but they're not just about getting drunk and enjoying wine. They also have a spiritual element, because drinking wine is generally used as a metaphor of escaping the world, of escaping the troubles, the obligations, the responsibilities of the world. So many poems about drinking wine are precisely about that. That's their main topic, not so much just getting drunk and enjoying wine, as escaping the red dust, the frustrations, the ambitions, the pains, the suffering of living in the world. So, they are generally these pleasant poems about the pleasures of drinking wine and being detached. This poem has a little bit of a landscape sub-theme as well. It's a very brief poem, and it's not very rhetorical. It doesn't have a use of dark images or imagery or references. It's a pretty straightforward poem, easy to read, and what it says is what it wants to say. It can be read very easily at face value. But we must always include this sub-theme of the mystical, almost religious detachment from the world that wine produces, and also this brief landscape description. In this poem, we get a very brief description of Stonefish Lake, with June Mountain in its background, and Bar Island in its middle. I have searched, I haven't found out where this lake is, but it was probably in one of the areas in which Yuan was a prefect during his lifetime. So two main topics, as I said, drinking wine, enjoying wine, sub-themes, or another sub-theme, almost as important as the main one, landscape description, this beautiful locus amoenus, where wine drinking takes place, perhaps implicitly old age and conviviality, which are topics, especially the second one, conviviality, that usually appear in poems about drinking wine, sharing the experience. It's not just a lone wine drinker that appears here. He is sharing wine with the other old men. So the poem has two stanzas. Let's go bit by bit, and those two stanzas do correspond to parts of the poem. The first one focuses on the context, really, on describing where the poem takes place, on describing this Stonefish lake, and it includes also a metaphor we'll comment about. And the second stanza puts the focus on a specific event or that is coterminous with the wine drinking at the lake, the fact that there were big waves on it, but yet the provision of wine was not interrupted by this rough water. Stonefish Lake is like Dongting, with rising summer waters, June mountain turning green. So the poem starts describing this lake, this Stonefish Lake, by comparison. So this is like Dongting. Dongting is one of the biggest lakes in southern China, close to the Yangtze River. And like Lake Dongting, this Stonefish Lake also has higher waters in the summer, and probably because of snow melting in the faraway mountains that fed the waters of this lake. And there's Jun Mountain in the background, turning green from the vegetation of the summer and of the summer rains. The mountain, a wine jar. The lake, a pool of wine. We drinking men are gathered along the island sands. So if the first couplet compares the lake to another lake, the second couplet establishes what is happening here, the wine drinking of the men in the shore of the lake, and creates another metaphor, another image for the lake and the mountain that is the background of the lake. The mountain is like a wine jar, the lake is like a pool of wine. So a very appropriate comparison based on what Yuan and the other men are doing in the lake, which is getting drunk. So looking at the mountain in the background, it would be easy to imagine it as a big jar, and the lake, the waters surrounding them, as wine. Water is being compared to wine, very traditional topic in universal poetry, really. Oh, Homer in the Iliad or in the Odyssey always talks of the wine-dark sea. Second stanza. Strong winds for days on end stir massive waves, but they haven't stopped the boatman bringing wine. With a huge wine gourd in my hands, I sit on Bar Island, dispensing wine for all of us to drink away our sorrows. So the anecdote that was commented in the prologue, in the introduction, is explained here again. So there is a strong wind, there are massive waves on the lake, which might be slightly threatening, but which are also aesthetic spectacle for the wine drinkers. But paradoxically, this hasn't stopped the boatmen from bringing wine. It seems that there are some merchants traveling in boats, selling wine to the people who come to the lake for relaxation and for ease. So, beautiful background sight of huge waves, incoming flux of wine, so you can get tipsy happily and without any interruption, the dream of any paradise resort of the 21st century. And the poem concludes with a link to the imagery of the wine jar, which appeared in the previous stanza in the view of the mountain. Here it is a big but very real wine gourd, which Yuan is holding in his hands, while he sits on the island and he dispenses wine generously to the other people who are enjoying the beach. Again, the last image, the last words of the poem put the emphasis on wine as a way of forgetting, as a way of escaping the sorrows of men, which in this case, we're talking about old men drinking wine, is mainly the sorrows of old age and the passage of time. But also in the case of Yuan Jie, it would have included the sorrows of unfulfilled ambition and glory and high positions in the court, and of being influential. So we drink wine to drink away our sorrows. So nothing much to say. This is a pretty short poem, and as I said, it's pretty transparent. It's just a picturesque poem in the literal sense of the word. You know, it paints two nice images of an old man enjoying wine and relaxing from whatever affairs and preoccupations he has been suffering in the past. So quite a nice, almost epigrammatic poem on enjoying old age, on enjoying wine, on enjoying relaxation, on enjoying a beautiful landscape.